Welcome back. In this video lesson, I will explain stakeholder management in detail. Stakeholder management is a critical success factor. Proper stakeholder management is a critical success factor for the success of the project. At the end of this module, you will understand the importance of stakeholder management, understand key stakeholder management activities performed during each project focus area, understand stakeholder register, understand stakeholder classification and associated stakeholder management strategies, and understand various types of powers of the stakeholder, and understand stakeholder engagement metrics and how to use it for the benefit of the project. Let us start with the definition of a stakeholder. Who is a stakeholder in the project management context? Anyone who is affected positively or negatively by doing a project, or by not doing it, or by delaying it is a stakeholder. I'll repeat. Anyone who is affected positively or negatively by doing a project, or by not doing a project, or by delaying a project is a stakeholder. Stakeholder management starts from the beginning of the project and continues till the completion of the project. During the initiation phase, the project passes through the phases of initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So during the initiation phase, a stakeholder register is prepared. A list of the master list of stakeholders is prepared during the initiation phase of the project. And then we get into the planning phase. So every stakeholder, we cannot give the same importance or the same strategy to deal with them. So the next step is prioritizing the stakeholders based on their power to influence the project. There can be some stakeholders who are extremely powerful. They can impact the project in a big way. They can decide whether to proceed with the project, and sometimes they can decide even to cancel the project. So these are the high power stakeholders. And there could be low power stakeholders as well. So stakeholders are prioritized based on their power to influence the project and their interest in the project. Some of the stakeholders may be highly interested in the project, whereas others could be medium interest or least interested, etc. So two parameters, the power and the interest, are used to classify the stakeholders. The main tool used is the power interest grid. So when we apply the power interest grid to the stakeholder register, we'll get segments like high power, high interest stakeholders, high power, low interest stakeholders, high interest, low power stakeholders, and low power and low interest stakeholder. So these groupings we'll get, and we can develop strategies to deal with these four segments. Uh, During the execution phase of the project, the stakeholder management strategies are implemented, and constantly we monitor the stakeholder engagement levels. And if the current engagement level is not up to the desired level, and if there is a gap, we should take action. For that, we use the stakeholder engagement matrix. Let us revisit these things in detail. Now, here is an example of the stakeholder ecosystem for an airport thing. We have the media and public, government bodies are here, customers and users are there, regulatory agencies, facilities managers, local communities, suppliers and contractors, internal team, project sponsor, airline operators, etc., etc. So this is just to explain the type of stakeholders, and is an example of the stakeholders for a airport project. Uh, then again, who are the project stakeholders? Any individual or group or organization that can be affected, or perceive itself to be affected by the project or its outcomes. This definition is widely used in modern project management and is described in a Guide to Project Management Body of Knowledge (PMBOK). Uh, then going back to classification of stakeholders, we can classify stakeholders into internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. That is one form of classification. Examples of internal stakeholders are project sponsor, project manager, project team members, functional managers, senior management, and maybe PMO, that is a project management office. And the examples of external stakeholders are customers or clients, suppliers and vendors, government agencies, local communities, regulatory authorities, investors, media, etc. Uh, Key stakeholders in most projects are the sponsor. The sponsor is the person who's financing the project. It could be an individual, it could be a group. And then we have the project manager, project team, customers, users, functional managers, and regulators. So, okay, now we discussed about the power of the stakeholders as a strong factor while classifying the stakeholders. Here, see, there could be different types of powers. The first one is the legitimate power, that is the formal authority, the designation, the CEO title, the COO title, CTO title, CFO title, the designation of that person, that gives a lot of authority. That is the legitimate power. Then we have the reward power, comes from the ability to provide incentives or rewards. That person can give increments. That is the reward power. Then we have coercive power, comes from the ability to punish or impose penalties, typically auditors, regulatory bodies, etc. Uh, they can they can give a penalty. So that is the coercive power. They can force you into decisions. And then we have expert power. In organizations, sometimes we can see people, they may not have big titles, etc., but they are highly respected for their expertise. So if you're good at something, that itself gives you a lot of authority level. So some of the stakeholders, they have this expert power. And for any major decisions, the other stakeholders may consult this person, and if this person say yes, that is a good idea, then they'll go ahead. But if this expert says, okay, that will not work for us, then the decision is impacted. Then we have referent power. That means if you have a lot of contacts, uh, or if you are a relative of a well-known personality, etc., that gives you a lot of power. That is the referent power. Comes from the personal charisma, reputation, and relationships. If I'm well connected, that itself will give me a lot of authorities. Then informational power. If you have more information than others, that itself will give you power. So while classifying stakeholders, what the major out of two aspects, the power and the interest. When we say power, it could be any of these, or it could be a combination of these things. Legitimate power, reward power, coercive power, expert power, referent power, and informational power. Sometimes the combinations are possible. An expert sitting in a very high position, so he or she will have both the legitimate power and the expert power. Or an expert who is well connected may have referent power also, or an expert who has more information than others. Uh, yeah, that informational power also will be there. So when we say power, it is not just the title, there are multiple dimensions to it. Then for stakeholder classification, we said the power interest grid is a tool used. So here it is the power. Here it is high, here it is low. And here it is the interest of the stakeholder in the project. Here it is low, here it is high. So here we get a segment that is high power, high interest category of stakeholders. So manage closely. We have to update them of the status on a very regular basis. If it's a small project, maybe even a daily basis or a weekly basis. It's because these are the high power, high interest groups. Then we have high power, low interest group. For example, the customer CEO, they may have a lot of other projects, and your project is just one of it. So the CEO may be high power, but may not show a lot of interest in the project because he or she has a lot of other things to do. Then we have low power and high interest groups. Here, typically the end users, they come under this category. If you are constructing an airport, the typical passenger segment, individually they are low power, and but they have high interest in the project, and collectively they can become high power. Individually they may be low power, but collectively they can be high power. Then here we have low power, low interest category. They are not powerful, they don't have much interest. So for the time being, we can just ignore them, monitor with the minimum effort. Whereas low power, high interest group, keep them informed about the progress of the project, a quarterly update, etc. High power, high interest, weekly update, involve in key decisions, engage regularly, and high power, low interest, keep satisfied and engaged, ensure their needs are met. So that is the power interest grid. And this is the most common one, or the most popular one is the power interest grid. And then we have other variations of it, like power influence grid. So low power, high power, low influence, high influence. So high power, high influence, again, we have to manage very closely. Then here we have influence impact grid. So, yeah, here it is influence, here it is impact affected by the project. So high influence, high impact, we must engage closely. And then we have the salience model. What it says is, okay, we discussed about here we have three parameters. One is the power of the stakeholder. Then we have the legitimacy of the stakeholder, that is a position, power, and then the urgency of that stakeholder's requirement. So if it is coming from a legitimate a person with high position who has a lot of authority, and if it is very urgent, if all these parameters intersects, then Definitely, no, you have to give them priority and prioritized attention because it is coming from a high power source, high legitimacy, means high position, high power, and the requirement is very urgent. So it must be given the consideration it demands. So we discussed about multiple types of powers, and again we discussed about different grids. And out of this, we said power interest grid is the most common one. And we also discussed about strategies to deal with high power, high interest, high power, low interest, low power, high interest, and low power, low interest groups. Uh, this power interest grid, uh, we already discussed, but then if you click here, you get a bigger diagram of the power interest grid. Then during execution time, we implement the strategies for stakeholder management, and we monitor their engagement level. So stakeholder engagement matrix is a very useful tool to monitor and control these stakeholder engagement levels. Let us take a detailed look at the stakeholder engagement matrix. Stakeholders can be at any of these states during the project execution. Some of the stakeholders could be totally unaware of the project, some could be resistant, some could be neutral, some could be very supportive to the project, and some could be leading. Now, here is a snapshot of the stakeholder engagement matrix of a project. Project sponsor. Uh, we expect the project sponsor to be leading the project. That means the desired state is leading, whereas the current state is only supportive. So there is a gap here. So we have to do something about it. The local community current status is they are resistant to the project, whereas the desired status is the local community must support the project, and there is a huge gap here. So we should come out with some actions to move the local community from resistant position to supportive position. Now, regulatory authority, they are in a very neutral position here, uh, whereas a desired state is supportive. So we must do something to move them from neutral to supportive. Same is the case with project team. The current level is supportive, whereas the desired level is leading. So we must take some actions to move from the current state to the desired state. So this is a simple tool, yet a very effective tool in managing stakeholder engagement. If a key stakeholder loses interest in the project and if you don't detect it on time, that can boomerang, that can come back as a major risk towards the end of the project. So we should keep monitoring and controlling the stakeholder engagement using the stakeholder engagement matrix. Now let us take an overview of stakeholder management. So we have to plan stakeholder management first. For that, what we do is identify stakeholders, analyze and prioritize stakeholders, understand needs and expectations and impact, develop stakeholder engagement approach and plan. Then we have to engage stakeholders, communicate and collaborate, involve with stakeholders as planned, address issues and respond needs, and build and maintain relationships. Then check, monitor engagement activities and stakeholder relationships, assess stakeholder satisfaction and feedback, evaluate the impact of stakeholders on the project, and determine what is wrong and what needs to improve. And take action whenever there is a deviation from the ideal. We must take action. So in this video, we discussed about stakeholder management. Anyone who is affected positively or negatively by doing a project or by not doing it or by delaying it is a stakeholder. Stakeholder management happens throughout the project. During initiation phase, you come out with a stakeholder register, and during planning phase, you prioritize the stakeholder based on their power and interest to influence the project. The main tool used is the power interest grid. And after stakeholder prioritizations, strategies to deal with various groups of stakeholders are developed. And during execution, these strategies are implemented. And throughout the project, stakeholder engagement levels are monitored and controlled using the stakeholder engagement matrix. I think this video lesson delivered good value to you. This is a lesson recorded for the participants of the PM Distilled Project Management Program. The link to the site is given in the description of this video. So you can click on it and then go to the PM Distilled e-guide, which is an open resource for people who wants to master professional project management according to the standards. Thank you very much.